Good afternoon and good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Backmarkers F1 Show channel. This is our 2021 British Grand Prix qualifying live stream watch-along. I'm very pleased to be back on the air. This is a little bit of a makeup stream for, of course, the canceled one that we had to, unfortunately, do for the Austrian one. So glad to be back. Thank you very much, everybody who's tuned in so far, and looking forward to seeing the rest of you for this next hour or so of qualifying, which should be very interesting. Qualifying on a Friday. Of course, we got the new sprint qualifying, sprint weekend format, which I'm really curious to see what you guys think. So definitely jump in the chat room and let us know what you think of this new format. Of course, just me today, Chris Cato, as your host. Tomorrow, for tomorrow's stream on Saturday for the sprint race or sprint qualifying session, I will be joined by Tyler McDonald. We will be going live a little bit after 11 a.m. Eastern Time, so I'll keep plugging that during the stream, and I will make sure to post it on our social media channels if you haven't already seen it. So definitely a very busy weekend of Formula One, and we're already here at the qualifying session, which is very new to pretty much all of us. It's the first time in F1 history that they've ever done anything like this, so it's been a bit of a transition for all of us, just getting used to the different times. But I just wanted to start out because qualifying will be starting in just a little over 10 minutes time over there in the UK at 6 p.m. UK time, and that will be a 1 p.m. start here in the Eastern time zone. So let's just round off the results from the first and only practice session before qualifying. Now, we're used to having 3 practice sessions before we get to qualifying, and now we only have data and analysis from 1, so it's very interesting. But really the story from FP1, if you guys missed it, was Max Verstappen's blistering pace right from the onset of the word go, as he set the fastest time of a 1:27.0, 7/10 quicker than the next fastest car, which was Lando Norris in the McLaren, which is actually a good sign to see if you're a McLaren and Lando fan. If you guys haven't heard, he obviously had some pretty big personal issues going into this race. He was unfortunately involved in an incident at the Euro 2020 final where he got robbed and his watch was stolen. I think it was a Richard Mille watch, which was pretty valuable because only McLaren made it for him. So he was a little bit shaken up by that whole incident, and there were some questions as to where his head was going to be at, but it looks pretty good so far because he did set that time of a 1:27.8. Interesting. Yeah, it looks like 1:27.8. Interestingly enough, actually, though, he did set that time on the medium tire versus Verstappen and the cars below him, which was set on the softer tire. So that is a little bit interesting. Now, it's kind of difficult to read into which teams were maybe running the engines a little bit higher. Of course, with more race running this weekend, I think teams are trying to preserve some of the parts, the engines and things like that. So we might not have seen all the teams turn it up to the max, of course, in this first session. But nonetheless, Max Verstappen looked incredibly quick, as he always does, but just especially in this session as well. Just right from the onset, he was really, really on it. Lewis Hamilton was in third to lead Mercedes, 7/10 behind Max Verstappen, only a couple of hundredths off of Lando Norris's best time. Hamilton was on the softest tire. Then we got Ferrari, Charles Leclerc in fourth, Valtteri Bottas rounding out the top 5 for Mercedes, and then Carlos Sainz in sixth. Sebastian Vettel, a pretty good time, 7th place in free practice 1. Aston Martin the last couple of weekends have gone towards more of a qualifying focus setup as they got both cars into Q3 in Austria. So it'll be interesting to see if that's a similar strategy here today. And then Sergio Perez down in 8th. We always see this kind of with Perez, which is going to be interesting how it plays out today because Perez is a slow starter. He usually doesn't set massively good times in free practice 1, but usually kind of turns it on for qualifying. But with this sprint format, he doesn't have that extra luxury of an FP2 or FP3 to really dial in the car and the setup. So we'll see if Perez can kind of get his pace back on form. He's 1.1 seconds off of his teammate Max Verstappen. Daniel Ricciardo in 9th, had a decent morning for McLaren, so good to see for Daniel Ricciardo back in the top 10. And then Esteban Ocon, who's running a new chassis this weekend. Of course, he's been having quite a few issues in the last few weekends since he's re-signed his 3-year deal with Alpine, but I think that some of that might have been due to an older engine and some other parts. So they put a new chassis in there. Seems like it's worked out so far. He is in 10th. The 2 Alpha Tauris in 11th and 12th, Pierre Gasly leading Yuki Tsunoda. Then you got the Alfa Romeo of Antonio Giovinazzi coming in there in 13th. Fernando Alonso, disappointing 14th, but it is only free practice. We'll see what his true pace is going to be like as we get set to go in qualifying in just a few minutes' time. Alonso's been on really good form in the last few weekends, so it was kind of a surprise to see him back there. But again, it is a free practice 1 session. Excuse me. Then you got below Fernando Alonso, Kimi Räikkönen in 15th, Nicholas Latifi, and then Mick Schumacher. Lance Stroll had some issues there in the Aston Martin in FP1, and then Nikita Mazepin in 19th, and George Russell down in 20th. Now, he did have his issues of his own, of course, in free practice 1. He had a cracked mirror as he went off the track at Copse Corner. His best lap time also got deleted because of track limits, so they will be monitoring that in qualifying. But also that's where he cracked his mirror, because I think they put some new curbs out there that are really kind of damaging to the car, similar like we usually see in Austria and places like that. So that's your rundown for FP1. It was only a 60-minute session, so kind of surprising that they didn't make that session a little bit longer, maybe 90 minutes, considering we are doing this sprint format, but they didn't want to do it that way, so they only did the 60 minutes. So very limited running. The cars are now in Parc Fermé conditions, so only limited changes are able to be made on the car. I think you're allowed to change the brakes, but not much after that. So any large setup changes or parts that need to be changed will not be able to happen right now. So we're usually able to see that during FP1 or in between FP1 and FP2, and we're not seeing that this weekend. So the way this is going to work, we're coming up to about 5 minutes to go until the session will begin at the top of the hour. So it's going to be just like your every day or every Saturday usual qualifying session. It will be the regular Q1, Q2, and Q3 sessions. Big difference being that the drivers who make it into Q3 will not have to start the race on the tire that they qualified in on Q2. So they will have a free choice of compound when they do the sprint race or the sprint qualifying tomorrow morning. So that is a slight change for this weekend. And I do believe that they have gotten some extra sets of the soft tires as well. And some of the drivers did some early running in FP1 on the harder compound and then sort of finished out the running on the softs, of course. Max Verstappen, for example, did 23 laps altogether this morning. So just trying different compounds. And I think Tyler and I will be discussing more of the race strategy in the build-up to tomorrow's sprint race and to see whether the drivers are going to start completely on the soft or whether they're going to go on a harder compound. It's going to be a 17-lap sprint race or sprint qualifying. It's technically called sprint qualifying, but of course it is a race at the end of the day. It's going to be 100 kilometers, and it will be running for 17 laps in total. So pit stops are most likely not going to happen. They definitely could, of course, if there's any damage or anything like that, but we're expecting it to just be a zero pit stop race and drivers being able to finish all on the same compound. So just depending on which compound they're going to go out on. All right, so while we have a couple of minutes, let's just peruse the F1 Twitter and see what's in the news. Tim Hauraney at TSN Racing Pod, of course, former guest on the show many times now. His prediction for the top three is going Verstappen, Leclerc, and Lewis Hamilton in his top three. So curious to know what you guys' predictions are. Submit them in the next couple of minutes. We can definitely still do predictions as we see Q1 and Q2 go down. So drop your comments in the chat room, and also just let me know where you're watching from. It's interesting, actually. We'll be talking about this a little bit more as well as we go into the stream. We got the poll that's going on in the live stream at the moment. Will the sprint qualifying weekend be a success? 73% of you so far have said that it will succeed, and only 27% of you have said that it will be a failure. So it'll be interesting to see where those numbers go as we head into the session. So let's see what else that we have here. Yeah, so not much else that has been going on in between the sessions. That looks like, let's see what Mick Schumacher looks like. He's got a special helmet design for this weekend.
And
sorry about that.
We turned it orange too. So, two great things. Again, all the names, they've worked so hard all year, and that's kind of saying thank you. And hopefully we'll be able to have some more good days ahead. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it. We have the 47 again on the top. And yeah, really excited to use it.
So that was Mick Schumacher. A lot of drivers actually running tribute helmets or special helmets for this weekend. Sorry, let me just close this for you guys here. So, yeah, that's Mick Schumacher's helmet. He's actually had a pretty good FP1. He was only a few hundredths off of the Alfa Romeos ahead of him and the Williams. So he actually had a pretty solid FP1, I would say. I think it's going to be hard for them to probably get out of Q1, of course, as it is for every single weekend. But nonetheless, I think that he had a pretty good step forward. So we're seeing here Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari garage getting ready to go for qualifying. And I'm really interested to see how this session will play out. Of course, I think we are expecting to see, really who can beat Max Verstappen at this point if we're going off of the free practice times. But really with this shortened weekend format, it's all going to be about which team and which car has been able to get out of the blocks quickly and on the pace right at the moment. Ferrari are actually usually pretty good with that. Carlos Sainz is one of the best. And obviously Max Verstappen clearly showed that in FP1 he was quite comfortable right away. So it's going to be interesting to see how much have Mercedes got in the bag. Of course, I think 7/10 would be quite a surprise if we see that continued into the qualifying session. But it seems like they are still on the back foot. But let's see what happens. It could be somewhat of a surprise for him. And then really down the rest of the grid too, because this is a regular qualifying, but you're qualifying for a different purpose, of course, with the sprint race or the qualifying race tomorrow. So grid positioning will be important, but it's just a whole different format. So tomorrow is also going to be extremely exciting to see whether or not this thing will be exciting or whether it's just going to be more of the dull races as we've kind of sometimes seen in the past. But that's why they're trialing it. They want to see whether it's going to work or not. And, yeah, just let us know in the chat what you guys think of it. It's new for all of us, and we're all doing it at the same time here. So, yeah, definitely. Oh, just froze there for a second. Yeah, definitely going to be interesting to see how it will play out. Coming up on about 3 minutes to go until the start of qualifying. They had the F2 qualifying just wrapping up as before we got on the air here. So the track should be rubbered in pretty well. And they are rolling, of course, the opening credits here. So wherever you are watching in the world, let us know in the chat room beside or below the stream, wherever it is located. Of course, there will be a slight delay to the live action, so I'll try not to do exactly direct commentary because what I'm seeing on my screen will probably be a little bit different than what you guys are seeing on your screen. But I'll let you guys know as soon as the session begins and we have an exact time. I'll let you know where I'm at, and then maybe you guys can try and pause it just to somewhat line up where you are in the stream. It's a beautiful day in Silverstone in the UK. Very similar, actually, to the weather here in Ottawa, Canada. It's nice and sunny. I think here it's actually a little bit warmer. 23 degrees was set for Friday free practice, which was today. I think the high is going to be on 25 degrees on Sunday, but that will really be as far as it goes. So it's actually some pretty good conditions for the fans that are in attendance. Of course, I think they will be having a full house. Oops, sorry. They will be having a full house at Silverstone, so it's good for the fans because if you're sitting in those grandstands all day, it's pretty tough when it's 30, 35 degrees. So we're about to get set. We should be seeing some telemetry or some of the live timings come in. So let's bring in our lap board. So it's also going to be interesting, or I was interested to see on Thursday, they were just talking about this on the Sky commentary, about the launch of the 2022 car. So the first 2022 car that we've kind of really seen in the flesh, and that's not a computer render. They released that yesterday on the grid. They did some photos with the drivers. I think maybe we'll take a look at it later or tomorrow with Tyler. I'm just curious what you guys think of how the 2022 car looks. It's interesting. From certain angles, it looks terrific and it looks great. And then from other angles, it kind of doesn't look as good. Or some angles, it actually kind of looks like an Indy car too, which is kind of funny. But I definitely think that the car looks better than what it did on the computer renders. And I know F1 put out some liveries actually of what the teams are going to look like. So they did some, and it's computer render, so it's not necessarily exact, and it doesn't look as good, obviously. But nonetheless, I still think that they look pretty good. So I'm curious to see what they're going to look like when they launch in 2022. All right, so we are about to get underway. So my timing that I have on my stream going on right now, the live feed that I'm watching on F1 TV, I'm at 17:44, 43, 42, 41, 40, 17:38, 37, 36. So just to give you guys an idea of where the stream is at, if you guys want to pause and kind of time it up that way. So hopefully the delay won't be too much, that we'll still be able to chat together and follow along. So currently out on the track, we have, let's load the tracker here for a second. So we got the Ferraris out on the track, and now my driver tracker isn't loading. Let me just reload here. So Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari, currently out on the track at the moment. We got the two Williamses out, I think, as well. Two McLarens, Ricciardo and Norris out. My driver tracker just seemed to not work at this point. Well, that's all right. So Lando Norris currently out on my screen at the moment. I got 18:20 right now up on my feed. So no lap time set on the board as well. They're just doing their out laps at the moment. We got the two Haas's out as well. It seems like the first car in the train is Carlos Sainz, so he should have a fairly clear track ahead of him at the moment. The Mercedes are both still in the garage. Of course, they're hoping to probably just get this one lap in and then come back into the pits. Track evolution isn't too high going from practice session to practice session here in Silverstone. Not as high as a street circuit, for example. But of course, we did have plenty of running in between the first session and then this qualifying session with F2 as well. So I think there should be some decent grip out on the track. And you can see it's different. We don't usually qualify this late into the afternoon. So you're seeing the sun kind of going down, starting to go down just a little bit there in the Great Britain, as the McLarens are actually backing up. I think that was Lando Norris who just locked up going into the penultimate corner, just trying to get some tire warm-up going. So we're currently on board with Lando Norris. So pretty much flat through turn one. That's not an issue. So going down into this corner, I believe it's called Brooklands. It's a tricky braking zone, actually, because you actually can take a little bit more liberty into the braking zone. You can brake a little bit later because it is a late apex. But then the following corner there of Luffield is a tricky one. You got that gravel trap that's on the outside of the exit of that corner. Very similar to turn 4 in Austria, actually. Or excuse me, turn 3. Yeah, no, sorry, turn 4 in Austria where we saw all the incidents in the previous race. So you got to be careful not to go out there. And then you got the track limits at turn 9 of Copse that they're going to be monitoring very closely. I think all the drivers so far don't have to worry about that. So Norris personal best in the first sector, purple sector, so he's the fastest in the second sector, but I believe that's he only had Carlos Sainz ahead of him. So Antonio Giovinazzi, very interesting. Giovinazzi goes faster than Giovinazzi goes faster than Gasly and Fernando Alonso. Very, very interesting. Hold on a second here. I'll have to change so that you guys can actually see the lap times here. All right, I'll just take this off the screen for a second so I can fix that. George Russell setting personal bests in the first and second sectors. So, all right, almost there in a second. Okay, there we go. We should be able to see the lap times and the gaps now. So we got Lando Norris setting the fastest time so far, a 28.2, 1/10 ahead of Antonio Giovinazzi in the Alfa Romeo. Everybody is out on the soft tire at the moment. Hamilton going quicker on his current lap. He's just set a purple Sector 1. So we got Perez, Leclerc, the both Mercedes. Max Verstappen hasn't set a time yet. We've also got the Aston Martins out as well. Yeah, Hamilton 27.6 in the first sector. He just gone purple in the second sector as well. So I'm expecting Hamilton here to go quickest on this lap for sure. He's also got a new helmet for this weekend. Still kind of got that purple color in it, so you can distinguish him from his teammate. Got some traffic, though, there in the final sector, which will be a little bit of an issue. It's what we see, really, at every single race weekend. You can't really avoid any of that, unfortunately. It's probably going to hamper his Sector 3 time a little bit. His teammate, Valtteri Bottas, goes quickest at the moment, but I think Hamilton will go faster, and he does. 0.3 quicker than what his teammate was able to do, but he did not set a purple final sector. So I think that he did lose quite a bit of time on that last sector because of all that traffic. So I think that lap should be good enough to get him into Q2, obviously, but definitely more pace and more lap time can be found in there because of that traffic. So Max Verstappen just started his lap. He's heading out there at the moment, also getting some traffic there in the first sector as he hits the first DRS zone. He should be all right heading here into Brooklands. We'll see what his first sector time is. 4/100ths of a second off of Lewis Hamilton's best first sector of a 27.6. It's not that much, but still a few hundredths. So this should be completely flat out going into Copse Corner. He turns in right at that 50-meter board. Doesn't use much of the track on the exit. Nice and clean for track limits. So let's see what he can do here in the middle sector. Purple middle sector, he's 0.2 up on what Lewis Hamilton was able to do of a 1:03.0 in that middle sector. So I think similar to how Hamilton lost out there in the final sector of traffic, I think Max, very, very squirrely on the exit of the final corner. Still goes quickest in this first Q1 session with a 1:26.7. So pretty good lap, I think, for Max Verstappen. Definitely not clean, though. I think there'll be a lot more time for him to find in that for sure, because there was quite a few moments there he had, especially in that final exit, that I think he'll be able to go quicker. But still a pretty healthy gap. 0.4 up on Lewis Hamilton. So that's a pretty big gap. Definitely not the 0.7 that we saw in free practice 1. Bottas is 0.7 behind Max Verstappen at the moment. So we got all drivers who have completed a lap, except for Esteban Ocon, who is currently on a flying lap. So we'll see where he's able to end up in the top 20. We're going to check the chat just in a moment once we get past this first round of runs, and then they go into the pit, so we'll have a little bit of a breather. So we got Verstappen P1, Lewis Hamilton in second, Valtteri Bottas in third, Charles Leclerc fourth, and Sergio Perez rounding out the top 5. So I think that the likes of Verstappen and Hamilton I think might come out for another run. But if you're somebody like a Max Verstappen, you're definitely safe. I think so far maybe some surprises or positive surprises. You got George Russell up in 9th. A very solid lap there from Russell. Maybe another surprise, Daniel Ricciardo down in 13th. He's almost over 2 seconds behind, of course, Max Verstappen's best time. Esteban Ocon in the Alpine, currently still on a flying lap. He's 0.4 quicker than Carlos Sainz's best time, which is the cutoff. Sainz in 15th place. But Carlos is also on a flying lap behind Esteban. So I think he might be going quicker and improving on his time. So Ocon about to cross the line. Let's see where he ends up. I think the timing board is a little bit ahead of the actual stream, and he goes 6th fastest, just slotting in behind Sergio Perez. So a very solid lap there from Esteban Ocon. Much better than his teammate, Fernando Alonso, who's down in 13th place. And Carlos Sainz does improve on his time. He goes quicker than Esteban Ocon up into 4th place, just ahead of his teammate Charles Leclerc, who put in a very solid lap on the first run, but he's also just about to finish a lap in 5th. Oh, and he goes, yeah, Charles Leclerc goes very, very wide indeed. And he was going to go much quicker on that lap, but unfortunately, it's not going to happen now. So currently the bottom 5 as the teams head back into the pits. Let's just wait to see where Fernando Alonso slots in. He's just finishing his lap. So Alonso goes up into 4th. So a very good lap there from Fernando Alonso. I think we are definitely seeing a little bit of track evolution, which the top 5 runners are going to be looking out for. So definitely most of the drivers are going to have to go out again as they get back into the pits to refuel and get on a new set of tires. So currently the bottom 5 at the moment, Daniel Ricciardo, Nicholas Latifi, Lance Stroll, and then the 2 Haas's of Mick Schumacher and Nikita Mazepin. So those are the 5 drivers at risk. I just saw Lando Norris is going to be heading out back onto the track. So let's see if there's any updates here on the social media side. Yeah, so like Chris Medlin was saying here, so Sainz definitely probably going to need to go again. And pretty much everybody, I think, below probably P3, P4 is going to have to go again just to be safe. Very good for Carlos Sainz, a 127.6 for P5 currently at the moment. Going to fix this once again. My data feed before we get out for the final runs here on the session. So really the drivers under pressure at the moment. Definitely it's going to be Daniel Ricciardo. Even Lando Norris in 10th is definitely going to need to put in a better lap. That's why I think we're seeing drivers getting out a little bit early. I don't know if they'll have enough fuel there to run for 2 laps to see if they can get 1 lap in and then a cool down and get out again. It's going to be close, but those are the drivers there at risk. Pierre Gasly in 11th, definitely not comfortable either. I think we saw a lot of track evolution and track improvement. So definitely I think those drivers are going to need to go out again. One chat so far, username looks very familiar. Hello to everyone watching. Hello as well. If you guys are currently watching, feel free to join into the chats and definitely let me know where you're watching from and your predictions as well. We still can get your predictions in for the final remaining time of this Q1 session, and of course who's going to take pole for this very first sprint weekend format. Qualifying on a Friday, then we're going to have the 100-kilometer sprint race or sprint qualifying on Saturday morning to determine the grid for the full race on Sunday. So if you guys don't know the format, we'll kind of go through it a little bit toward the end of the show. And also it's in our A to Z guide video of the British Grand Prix that you guys can find there. So it's a little bit confusing, I know, because there are a lot of changes to the schedule and also tire rule and allocation and things like that. So it's tough to kind of keep track of. Currently out on the track, on my stream, the time at the moment is 3:02, 3:01, 3 minutes. Pierre Gasly just crossed the line to go 5th fastest with a 1:27.6. So he should be safe, at the moment at least, 5th place. Daniel Ricciardo currently down in 16th, but is lapping personal best in the 1st and 2nd sector. He should be going quicker, but we'll see if it will be enough where he will slot in. His teammate also out on track just behind him. So Ricciardo rounding out the final 2 corners. And he goes 6th fastest. So that's going to be a little bit touch and go there for Daniel Ricciardo. I think it's going to be tough. And it's going to be very close because I think there's more pace in that Aston Martin, for example, of Lance Stroll as well, and for Sebastian Vettel. So the 2 Ferraris as well out on the track. They're currently 8th and 9th, but they should have enough pace to set a good time, safe enough for Q1. So currently in the drop zone, you got Vettel, Latifi, Mick Schumacher, Lance Stroll, and Nikita Mazepin. So the 2 Hasses, not much of a surprise there. The Williams of Nicholas Latifi, not much of a surprise. I think Sebastian Vettel, of course, we don't really expect him to see him there out in Q1. So he'll have to put in a good lap. We're coming up to just about 90 seconds left in this session. And quite a bit of a traffic jam going on here in the final corners here between the Williams and the 2 Alfa Romeos. But I think they'll back up and give each other enough space. So we got drivers coming through out on flying laps. The Williams just got out of the way. The Alfa Romeos out of the way as well. So Russell's just starting his flying lap. He's down in 15th. Of course, he's safe at the moment, but the cutoff is very, very close. Of course, it's no Mr. Saturday this weekend, so hopefully he can be Mr. Friday to try and get into Q2 and then Q3 as well at his home race. Of course, we got home race for Lewis Hamilton and Lando Norris as well, and George Russell. I don't think I'm missing any other Brits at the moment on the grid, but let me know if I did. So Russell coming through right now to the first Sector 1 loop. Let's see what his time is. So, of course, 1/10 off of Verstappen's time. He did set a personal best in Sector 1. Ooh, kicking up a little bit of dirt on the exit of Luffield. Shouldn't affect his time too much. Carlos Sainz currently setting purple Sector 1. So Russell's okay for track limits. Very, very quick complex here. They're pulling over 5G laterally, going through the Maggots and Beckett's complex, and even going through Stowe as well. It's very, very high amount of G-force on the body and on the neck going laterally. So checker flag is out, so Q1 at the moment is finished, so drivers need to complete their laps. Russell personal best in the first 2 sectors. Lance Stroll improving as well, going faster. So Russell will cross the line, and he will go 8th fastest. So 9/10 off, of course, Max Verstappen. Giovinazzi goes 6th fastest. So he's improved on his time as well, so putting Russell in the Williams under a little bit of pressure. So Sebastian Vettel goes 5th fastest as well. So there was that improvement that we saw from Aston Martin. So I don't know if that'll be enough there for the Williams to stay in Q2. Esteban Ocon goes 3rd fastest at the moment. Lance Stroll about to complete his lap. Oh, I'm pretty surprised by Lance Stroll's lap there. Only a couple of hundreds quicker. He's currently at risk in 15th. Carlos Sainz improves, jumps up into 4th. He was well safe. And same with his teammate Charles Leclerc, who jumps up into 2nd place with that lap. Luckily for McLaren fans, Daniel Ricciardo safe there in P5, so very good news for him being able to exit out of Q1. And I believe that is all the drivers at the moment. Lewis Hamilton was out and did do a faster lap on his 2nd run there. So track evolution was a little bit higher than I expected. Still down on Max Verstappen's time, nonetheless, for Lewis Hamilton. But the drivers out in the drop zone right now are Nikita Mazepin, Lance Stroll, Mick Schumacher, Nicholas Latifi, and this our live timing froze there, guys. My apologies. That's why I was looking at it. I was like, I think Sebastian Vettel was in Q2. Okay, so here we go. We got the updated times here. So currently in the drop zone and out of Q1, we got Yuki Tsunoda, Kimi Räikkönen, Nicholas Latifi, Mick Schumacher, and Nikita Mazepin. So those are the 5 drivers who will not make it into Q2, and that will be their starting position for the 100-kilometer race that will happen tomorrow. So other drivers that got into Q2, maybe a good result there for George Russell, just squeezing in 14th. Pierre Gasly just making it in as well, up in 13th place. A very good and strong qualifying there for Antonio Giovinazzi, who slots in at 12th. Outqualified his teammate Kimi Räikkönen as well by more than almost 4/10 there over his teammate Kimi Räikkönen. Lewis Hamilton on his second run, 3/100ths of a second off of Max Verstappen's best time, but keep in mind that there was quite a significant amount of track evolution that we saw, and Verstappen did only 1 run in that first session. So very interesting Q1 there. Let me know if you guys have seen any surprises there out on your end, and who you're going to be expecting are the 5 drivers out in Q2. So let's see if we can update our social feeds here. So I don't think Sergio Perez went out in Q1 for the second time either. So both Aston Martins eventually do make it into Q2. Let's see if they can make it to Q3 for the second race in a row. So the Ferrari's looking good at the moment. I think Tim Hauraney's prediction of Charles Leclerc maybe qualifying on the front row, or at least the top 3 in the grid, might come true. We've seen Leclerc pull off some incredible laps, especially at this circuit last year, if you remember. I can't remember if it was the 70th anniversary Grand Prix or the British Grand Prix, but he pulled out some quite spectacular laps in qualifying in 2020, and he's pulled out a couple of good ones this season as well. So it'll be interesting to see if he can do that. So just trying to see if I can see if there's any team radio here. Okay, we got some team radio from Pierre Gasly. Let's see what he had to say if you guys missed it on the broadcast.
If you need one for yourself, we can go. Huh? If you want one for you to learn about the next session, we can go again.
Yeah, I'm just thinking maybe we might need it for Q3, no?
We may, yes.
Let's take a look at Max Verstappen. He only ran 1 set of tires.
Oops, sorry about that. We got audio coming through somewhere. So I think that's Russell into every Q2 session so far this season, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think that he's missed Q2 pretty much in any session so far this season. So very, very good lap for him. A lot of people expecting him to score points at his home race here at the British Grand Prix, which would be absolutely brilliant if he could do it, but we'll see. A lot of people expecting him to score points. Okay, let's see if we got any team radio. We're still waiting for Q2 to begin, so we got a couple more minutes here in the lull between the 2 sessions. So that was Pierre Gasly on that team radio before there, guys, just asking to go out on a second run or whether they should save the tires for Q3. This is Max Verstappen.
Well caught.
I think that was GP talking about his moment that he had in the final corner. So when he still set a pretty good time, though, even with that mistake. This was his teammate, Sergio Perez.
I ran wide into the final corner.
Latifi behind.
I lost a bit there.
Okay, so Perez also going wide into the final corner, so he's got some time to make up as well. Let's hear Fernando Alonso.
Okay, so how was the balance?
Understeer.
I think that's the Alpine trademark in 2021 is the understeer, so not surprising there, even though that they have brought some upgrades in the past couple of races. That's kind of been one of the signature issues of their car so far. So we hear Fernando talking about that quite often this season. And we'll do this last one, Carlos Sainz, Ferrari Team Radio.
And the wind is similar to previous session, lower intensity, similar to forecast.
Yeah, and Silverstone is known to be a track that's very wind sensitive, and it does change quite a bit. They were saying it was supposed to be around 16 kilometers an hour for this session. So it definitely changes a lot, and there are a ton of high-speed corners in this Silverstone circuit. So the wind definitely does affect the drivers a lot. It changes the balance of the car, and it can be completely different basically from 10 to 15 minutes on, depending on how aggressive the change is. But it's one thing that drivers are constantly always looking for, whether looking at the flags on the grandstands or getting, of course, the information from their engineers. Okay, so we're back underway here for Q2. So I will bring in the live telemetry here for you guys. So the Mercedes out on the track right away. So for my F1 TV timing, I've got 13... Oh, sorry, it just froze there a second. Let me reload. It will be a slightly delay, so it won't be perfect, but we try to work with it anyways. It's 13:34, 33, 32, 31, 30, 13:29, 28, 27. So just to give you guys a rough idea of where I'm at and what I'm looking at the moment. Excuse me. So if you want to, you can sync it up at home, or if you're okay with the delay, then not a problem. So it looks like the Mercedes are both out on the soft tire. So as mentioned before off the top of the stream, guys, they do not have to start. The drivers that progress into Q3 do not have to start the race on that tire. So it's not the same rule as a normal race weekend. They do get a free choice of compound when they go into the sprint qualifying or the sprint race session as it begins tomorrow. So they do not have to worry about that. So we should see pretty much everybody out on the soft, which is just, I guess, one less thing that the teams have to worry about. So full performance, full power, and of course, softest tires, as well as, I believe this is Lewis Hamilton who's leading the train, and he begins his first flying lap here in Q2, as we are just coming up to 12 minutes remaining in this Q2 session. Very glad to have everybody along that's watching the stream. Of course, if you haven't already done it, just say hello to us in the chat rooms, or just leave us a like there on YouTube if you are enjoying the stream, and we hope that you're enjoying qualifying wherever you're watching from in the world. So Hamilton approaching turn 1. Of course, he's the first driver out there, so purple first sector, no surprises there. It looks like actually it is... I'm just trying to see on the driver tracker, but it does look like Max Verstappen is actually ahead of Lewis Hamilton, so apologies, I thought Verstappen was the first out on the track. So Hamilton gets a little bit of traffic through Maggots and Beckett's, which is probably the worst place that you want to have traffic there in that high-speed section. He set purple first sector, purple in the second sector. So Max Verstappen down in... Yeah, okay, so it is Max Verstappen is behind then. So Lewis Hamilton coming across the line. So he goes quickest at the moment. He sets a 1:26.6 in the final sector. He's 1/10 down on his best. So Verstappen right now, currently on my feed, just coming out into the hangar straight. No purple sectors for him. He's, of course, setting personal bests in the first two. But we'll see where this time puts him. It doesn't seem like he set the best first sectors, that's for sure. Sergio Perez goes into third, slotting in behind the two Mercedes. So as Verstappen crosses the line, he does go quickest indeed. Okay, very interesting. 1:26.5, purple in the final sector. So he definitely improved a lot from his Q1 run, actually keeping the car on track. So a lot of improvements there made from Max Verstappen. George Russell goes into 7th. But of course, plenty of drivers still to get their times in. So let's look as other drivers finish their laps. So 9/100ths of a second, the difference between Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen on the first runs there in Q2. We got less than 10 minutes to go here. And 5 drivers still without a time, as Ocon and Alonso are just about to complete their laps. So Esteban Ocon goes into 8th place. Let's see where his teammate will end up. Fernando Alonso in 11th, so not able to match Esteban Ocon's time. He's about nearly 2/10 down on what his young French teammate was able to do. We got Giovinazzi still to complete a time, and he just did, down in 13th place with a 1:28.1. And then, of course, the 2 Ferraris, we'll see where they're able to slot in. Pierre Gasly goes 9th quickest, a 1:27.4. It definitely won't be good enough, I think, for the AlphaTauri. So let's see what kind of pace the 2 Ferraris will be able to give us. They'll be probably the final cars to finish their first runs here on Q2, as most of the front runners there are now into the pits, get on a fresh set of tires, refuel the car. Of course, the likes of Max Verstappen and Hamilton, and I think Bottas as well, are safe to Q3, but they'll want to get another run in just to get a feel for their Q3 laps, going for pole position. So I'm currently watching Charles Leclerc right now, going through Stowe Corner as he's about to come and finish his lap. He's got personal best in the first 2 sectors, but of course this is his first lap of this Q2 session. Oh, not a perfect time for my feed to freeze. Let's see where Leclerc ends up. And Charles Leclerc, only 8th fastest. Okay, a bit surprising there, I think, to be behind the McLaren of Daniel Ricciardo and the Aston Martin of Sebastian Vettel as well. We missed that lap as we were just trying to look at some of the sector times with Verstappen and Hamilton. But that's a mighty lap there from Sebastian Vettel in 5th, a 1:27.1, almost 6/10 behind what Max Verstappen was able to do, but not very far off of the other Red Bull of Sergio Perez. It's only just a couple hundredths of a second, actually. So that's an extremely good lap from Sebastian Vettel. I wonder if that's good enough for Q3. Of course, he'll probably come out again, but still, that's a very, very strong lap. Yeah, so surprising to see the 2 Ferraris of Sainz and Leclerc down in 7th and 8th. 1:27.202 for Carlos Sainz, a 1:27.278 for Charles Leclerc. So not much in it between the 2 Ferrari drivers as well. So they're definitely going to need to come out again. Currently in the drop zone, we have Pierre Gasly, George Russell, Fernando Alonso, Lance Stroll, and Antonio Giovinazzi. So we got team radio from Charles Leclerc. I'm seeing just popping up right now on the world feed. We're going to see if we can get that actually through the leaderboard. But let's go to our social channels, and we'll see what social media, what the F1 Twitterverse is saying, as we get to a little bit of a lull before we go out for the final runs. So yeah, Verstappen 0.098 seconds clear of Hamilton in the first run there. So he wasn't able to go quicker in Sector 1 and 2, but he had the fastest final sector of any driver. So I think that there's some time there to find for Max Verstappen. Wasn't as quick there in the first 2 as he was in the first Q1 runs. So it doesn't look like we got anything special or out of the ordinary happening. So let's see if we can get that team radio from Charles Leclerc, if there's any issues that he was seeing. Here we go. All right, let's see what Charles had to say.
I need a slipstream, guys. Huh?
Understood.
And tell me if he wants to swap. Tell it to me before, so we arrange ourselves.
Yeah, copy.
Okay, so Charles Leclerc asking for the slipstream or the tow to get him some more straight line speed. Of course, it is a higher downforce setup here in Silverstone, but at the same time, you do need some good straight line speed because we do have 3 DRS zones, and of course, you're going to need a lot of power to get down on that back straight, so it is very important to the lap time as well. All right, let's see what Sergio Perez's team radio was saying.
If there are no cars around, it will be good to get a tow.
Yeah, we're clear. We're in clear, I'm afraid.
Yeah, so a lot of drivers actually asking
If
for the
there are no cars around,
Sorry.
it will be good.
I want to play the repeat there. So we're about set to go for the final runs then in Q2. So let's see which 10 drivers will move on into Q3. We got some people saying that they're pretty seeing as the sprint aspect of the weekend is kind of pointless with this session. I understand what people are saying. It's definitely debatable for sure of the new format, but that's why they're trialing it at 3 races this season to see whether it's going to work or not. The majority of you in our poll in the chat room, and I think on our community tab as well, are thinking that it is going to be a success. So yeah, let's wait and see. If tomorrow's really the big one with the sort of sprint qualifying or sprint race aspect to it. Of course, this is still a regular qualifying session, but tomorrow I'm very interested to see what that 17-lap race is going to look like. I have a feeling that it might be a little bit of a procession, just as we've seen in many races before, but maybe we're wrong. We'll see. But for now, we're focusing on Q2. At the moment, my time is 2:37, 2:36, 2:35, 34, 33, 32, 31, 30, just as it froze. So just to give you guys an idea of where I'm at to finish this session. And then, of course, we got Q3 upcoming. So drivers that will definitely want to get out and set a faster lap time will be the 5 that are in the drop zone currently: Pierre Gasly, George Russell, Fernando Alonso, Lance Stroll, and Antonio Giovinazzi. Hopefully, Pierre Gasly can get out of Q2. I got him in my fantasy team for this weekend, and I believe I did select him as my turbo driver, so hopefully he can get out of Q2. The 2 Ferraris as well, sitting in 7th and 8th, I think will want to get in a faster lap time, absolutely, just to be sure. We've got a 6/10 gap from Carlos Sainz to the leader, Max Verstappen, but they're going to be focusing on the drivers behind and ahead of them, as Esteban Ocon has looked fairly quick so far in these first couple of sessions. Lance Stroll has been struggling quite a bit, going back to free practice 1 and also Q1 as well, but I think there's still more pace in that Aston Martin, as his teammate Sebastian Vettel showed, but I don't know if Lance will be able to unlock it to be able to get into the top 10. So drivers still out on outlaps, but the Ferraris are ahead of the queue, so Carlos Sainz is just beginning his lap. We've got 103, 102, 101, and 1 minute left in Q2. So Sainz looking very nice and smooth through turns 2 and turns 3. And this is the first DRS zone here. He doesn't have any sort of a tow or a slipstream. I'm trying to just see where his teammate Charles Leclerc is, because we heard on that radio that Leclerc was trying to get some sort of a tow or slipstream from his teammate, but it doesn't seem like they've been able to work that out. Sainz only 7/100ths quicker in the first sector than his previous best lap. His teammate Charles Leclerc also setting a personal best, as well as Pierre Gasly so far in the first sectors. I believe Sainz will be the first to cross the line in this train of cars, so we'll see where he ends up. But looking also at Pierre Gasly, who's currently in the drop zone down in 11th. So Sainz 1/10 off of Verstappen as he gets out of Sector 2. Again, a personal best. So Sainz looking to improve on this lap. We'll see how much track evolution comes into play like it did in Q1. But Pierre Gasly currently at the moment at risk of being eliminated, or not even getting into Q3 for that matter, because he hasn't gotten faster in the middle sector. So Sainz crosses the line. He goes fourth fastest. Excuse me. With a pretty good lap time there, 8/10 down off the best of Max Verstappen. Pierre Gasly does improve, but only slightly to go in 10th. I don't think that will be enough, as Ocon and the likes of Russell might even be able to out-qualify him. Let's see where Lance Stroll is able to end up. Yeah, Lance Stroll doesn't improve, only 15th, so he is knocked out of Q2. Lando Norris, not much improvement there as well. He is in 9th. Let's see how much the drivers below. Esteban Ocon also not able to get out of Q2, but Fernando Alonso pips his teammate to go 10th, but George Russell smashes them all out of Q2 and goes up into 7th place to make it into Q3, a sight that we've seen quite frequently actually in the past 2 races. Well done there to George Russell in front of the home crowd in Silverstone to go 7th fastest, only a second off of the best time of Lewis Hamilton, who did go quicker with the 1:26.0, 2/10 up on Max Verstappen. So that's an interesting part there as well. But for now, we're focused on the 5 drivers who are out of Q2, and that's Fernando Alonso, Pierre Gasly, Esteban Ocon, Antonio Giovinazzi, and Lance Stroll down in 15th. So the 2 McLarens of Ricciardo and Norris have progressed. Sebastian Vettel, a very good lap to get him into Q3, the lone Aston Martin. Like we mentioned, George Russell in 7th. An excellent lap there from Russell. And the 2 Ferraris able to improve as well, going 4th and 5th for Sainz and Leclerc. So now let's take a look at where Lewis Hamilton was able to find the time there of Max Verstappen. So 2/10 up. So it seems like definitely Sector 1, because in Sector 1, Lewis Hamilton set a 33.3 versus Verstappen's 35.3 in the first sector. So that's where he was able to gain most of the advantage. Verstappen was actually able to claw back almost 2/10 in that middle sector. And then in the final sector in 3, they're about even, where Lewis Hamilton is roughly around a couple of hundredths of a second quicker. So it's really that first sector that made all the difference. Not sure if Verstappen made a mistake or if there was some traffic to come into play. So we'll see. We'll see what the battle for Q3 is like. But it seems like it's getting closer between Hamilton and Max Verstappen for the battle for pole. I don't think anybody else is going to be able to come into contention for pole position this afternoon. Okay, so let's head back into our Twitter feed to see what's going on. Yeah, pretty good turnaround from George Russell from FP1. I would agree with Tim's thoughts on that. But I think in FP1, we see it, right? When drivers, when it counts the most, these elite drivers like the George Russells of the world are able to put in the best of laps. But I think P7 is pretty impressive. And I think that he'll have a chance to start maybe a P9, maybe even P8. We'll see. He's got some quick cars ahead of him, but nonetheless, a very good starting position for him in this new sprint race weekend. And these are sort of the teams that could take advantage of this newer format, like the likes of Williams. And who knows, they might be able to score their first points with George Russell this weekend. I know a lot of fans have been predicting it and are definitely hoping for it, but we'll see what happens. So let's see if we got any of the team radio. I'm sure they played a little bit of it on the main feed if you guys are listening to it, but if not, we'll play it here. Sorry if it is repetitive, but I don't have any of the main feed audio going, so I'm not able to hear any of the team radios. So we got Charles Leclerc. Let's see what he had to say.
I need a slipstream guy.
Okay, so that was the same slipstream. So it doesn't look like we have any new team radio. All right, so we still got a little bit of a lull here in between Q2 and Q3 before we get set for the final session. Already here on Q3. This hour or so has flown by very, very quickly, and we're already in Q3. And it's interesting. I wonder what you guys think. Some are saying that they feel that this qualifying session is a little bit pointless. And yeah, I understand what people are saying in terms of this new format and everything. But it's kind of strange being that the pole position is not necessarily going to be pole for the race. It's going to be pole for the sprint race that comes tomorrow. So it's a little bit confusing, and maybe they're going to find that it wasn't necessary. But yeah, nonetheless, it definitely is a trial run anyways. So yeah, definitely the one thing that helps with having fans at the track or being able to see trackside footage or trackside photos from the fans, which are always nice to see. And usually when you see personal cell phone footage or somebody that posts them online, you get a better sense for the speed actually, just because of the different angles and of course frame rates and things like that of the main feed doesn't do the speed justice. So usually when somebody just posts a cell phone video, you kind of get a better idea for just how quick some of these cars are in some of these corners. All right, so still waiting to get underway for Q3. Of course, 10 minutes in that Q3 session to determine who will start on pole position, air quotes, for the sprint race tomorrow. Yeah, everybody very, very impressed with George Russell's lap. Okay, so let's go back to our data here as we're about to get set for the final session of this Friday qualifying session for this new sprint weekend format. We keep saying it, but of course we do have to remind ourselves that it's not a Saturday, even though it feels like it with qualifying. So it's definitely new. And so far, it's been interesting. Definitely, I think that having things moved up on a Friday, it would be interesting to hear what the fans at the track have to say. Because obviously, when I used to go to races, we'd have 3 hours of free practice on a Friday, which, as a fan attending the track, you really, really enjoy because you have plenty of time to walk around the whole circuit, see the cars at different areas and different corners as well. So I really enjoyed having plenty of free practice on a Friday when you visit the Grand Prix in person. Now, I understand that people watching at home find that the sessions are just a little bit long because 90 minutes are quite long for a free practice session. And I do enjoy the 60-minute free practice sessions that we've had so far in this season. It just feels like there's more action. It's not as long. It's easier to catch up on all the sessions this way. But I can understand that maybe people at the track necessarily don't like it as much. But we'll see what the fans have to say from this format because you only got the one free practice for 60 minutes this morning, as the pit lane is currently now open for Q3. And then, of course, you only have this session, which is much later in the evening, of course, 6 o'clock UK time, just to give people who are coming from work a chance to go to the Grand Prix, which, of course, was one of the issues that I raised back in the very beginning when they first announced this. But it's the reason why they pushed it back so late, is so that people have a chance to actually get to the circuit. So yeah, definitely a lot of split opinions on it, but when it's all said and done, I think there'll be a lot of videos coming out on opinions, and I'm sure we'll be debating about it on our podcast, and maybe even doing a separate video on it as well. So we'll see what we have to say. Still 74% of you think that it's going to succeed, so yeah, very interesting. All right, so no drivers coming out just yet for this final Q3 session. So my timing, I've got... Hold on. It's every time I try and update you guys on what my exact time is, it just seems to freeze. So I've got 10, 22, 21, 20, 19, 18, 17, 16. They're currently showing Sergio Perez in the garage getting set to go out. Of course, brand new shiny soft tires, the C3. Pirelli brought the C1, the C2, and the C3 compounds for this weekend. No surprise there. Of course, this being such a high demand circuit on the tires, they have gone with the hardest compounds. Rear tire pressures, they've got the new, sturdier, the more robust rear tires that they were testing in Austria that are now going to be used for the rest of the season. So those are being used here in Silverstone. And the rear tire pressures and the fronts actually are quite high, 23 PSI on the rear. So it's pretty high considering for a Formula One tire, but they're trying to maintain the integrity and the construction of the tire so that we don't see the failures that we saw excuse me, that we saw last season. So let's see the battle for pole here. Is it going to be Lewis Hamilton or will it be Max Verstappen? So we got all drivers who are heading out onto the track at the moment. They're currently riding on board with Max Verstappen, and yeah, for whatever reason, the on F1 TV, I'm not sure how many of you guys have F1 TV, my driver tracker is unable to load. So I'm not exactly able to see where the position is. When we had Tyler with us tomorrow, it'll be much easier because we usually kind of split up who's watching which screens. I'll be watching the main feed. He'll be seeing the data and, of course, the driver tracker. So just able to give more information for you guys who are catching and watching the stream. So quite slow outlap here for Verstappen, which isn't a surprise, trying to just preserve as much life as he can into the tires. So he's behind the Mercedes of, looks like, Lewis Hamilton. So they're just heading down the hangar straight at the moment. And they've got the Ferraris ahead and Valtteri Bottas as well. And then the drivers, everybody, of course, slowing down to a crawl as we get to the final corner. You'll probably see in the right-hand side of your screen, that is the live timing leaderboard from Formula1.com. That is actually a little bit ahead of the stream, so you will probably see that the times will show up first before your F1 TV feed does. I'm going off of the F1 TV feed, so you'll probably see it ahead of time, but that's okay anyways. So Hamilton, Verstappen, Bottas, all on a flying lap at the moment. Lewis is currently ahead of Max out on track, so we'll be able to get a good reference as to who will come out on top in these first runs. Both drivers look pretty solid and smooth for the first three corners as they head down into the first DRS zone for Max Verstappen. So Hamilton 27.3 in the first sector, quickest of anybody at the moment. Verstappen down on that time, a 27.4. So currently edge to Lewis Hamilton at the moment. And we saw that in Q2 that Verstappen wasn't able to best Lewis Hamilton in that first sector. It seems like Red Bull has found a decent advantage in that final sector, but we'll see how it shapes up in these first runs here. Hamilton is just about to go through the timing loop for Sector 2 here on my feed, as Sergio Perez goes quickest with a 26.8. Lewis Hamilton purple in the second sector, 0.6 up on Sergio Perez's time, but there comes Max Verstappen purple in the middle sector. So this is going to come down all to how clean and how smooth and how much speed will they able to get out of the exit of these final three corners, as Lewis Hamilton will go and cross the line. So 0.4 up on his teammate, 126.1, but Max Verstappen is coming through as well. Second, and unable to best Lewis Hamilton, a 26.3, almost 0.2 down on Lewis Hamilton's time. So very, very good lap there from Lewis Hamilton, considering what we saw there in that first practice session and even in that Q1 session as well. That's a very, very solid lap there for Lewis Hamilton. 1.72 tenths up on Max Verstappen's best time. So, oops, sorry about that. So advantage Lewis Hamilton at the moment for the British Grand Prix. So either Mercedes were hiding a lot of pace there in that free practice session, or Hamilton was able to do quite a bit of work in those last couple of hours to be able to fine-tune the setup, and he certainly found something that he's happy with. And, of course, as we expected, the battle for pole really between Lewis and Max, as nobody else has been able to even get close. Valtteri Bottas 4/10 off of Lewis Hamilton's best time, and about 3.5 tenths or so off of Max Verstappen's best time. Sergio Perez, quite disappointing as well. He's almost 3 tenths behind Valtteri Bottas. We were hoping that he could maybe get in the fight there with the Mercedes, but unable to do so. And he's got Lando Norris behind him for company, only a few 100ths off of him for 4th place. Daniel Ricciardo, a very solid lap to slot him right in behind his teammate with a 1:26.8, and very close to Lando's time as well. So Lando is 1:26.89, and Daniel Ricciardo is a 1:26. Or excuse me, let me start that over. So Norris set a best time of 1:26.897, and Daniel Ricciardo 1:26.899. So really only a couple of thousands almost in between those two teammates. So it's incredibly close. And then further down the order, we got the Ferraris, who are a little bit further behind than I thought they would be. Charles Leclerc, he's got a 1:27.1, and then Carlos Sainz with the 27.6. George Russell and Sebastian Vettel, I think they have not set a time yet. They're currently out on the track at the moment. So I think they had to use up, of course, an extra set of tires. So now they're going to go out for a clear track and try and get these final runs. So let's see. I don't think that Russell will have the pace to slot in ahead of the Ferraris, but let's see if he can maybe try and get the better of Sebastian Vettel, who is going to have to come out as well and set a flying lap. Or excuse me, Vettel had a track limits at turn 15, so his lap time was deleted. So he was out on track, but of course his time was deleted. So he will definitely have to go again, or else he will be starting 10th for the sprint race tomorrow. So let's see where Russell's going to end up here. Of course, personal best. Don't expect any purple sectors from a Williams just yet. Hopefully in 2022 and beyond we will. As the rest of the field are starting to head out to do their final runs in Q3. We got both Mercedes, both Red Bulls out on track, and only Daniel Ricciardo is still in the McLaren garage. So let's see where this time will put George Russell. Can he do better than 9th, where he's sitting at the moment? Goes up into 7th place. Very solid lap there from George Russell. I just said a couple minutes ago, I don't think he'll go quicker than the Ferraris, but he just did. Now, of course, the Ferraris are going to be coming out again and are able to try and go quicker than that, but that's a really good lap, a 26.9 from Russell. That's only 8 tenths off of what Lewis Hamilton was able to do. So for the Williams to be within less than a second of the Mercedes and definitely the Red Bulls is very impressive. And if you really look at it, the sector times, I mean, just before these guys improve, he's only less than 2 tenths off of the McLaren of Lando Norris and Daniel Ricciardo as well. So I hope that lap is able to stick for George Russell and these other guys don't go quicker, because that's a mighty fine lap. And especially with all the rumors circulating his future and his potential move to Mercedes, I think that's a very solid result for him, and he's extremely motivated here at his home circuit. But now the battle comes down to Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen. Hamilton is about to begin his flying lap as we are just about to expire the Q3 session. So Verstappen will be trying to improve quite a bit there in Sector 1. It seems like that's where he's losing most of the time, as Hamilton is going quicker at the moment than he did on his first run. So a lot of work to do here for Max Verstappen as he's still out on his outlap. So my feed is just catching up there to the timing screen. So 1/10 quicker for Lewis Hamilton through the Sector 1. So that's a pretty good improvement. I'm curious to see what Verstappen is able to do. So Verstappen is just about to head out onto the DRS zone, the first one as well. So we'll update you guys on his first sector time. Hamilton is just going through the Maggots and Beckett's complex at the moment as we speak, as he's approaching the checkered flag. So Verstappen unable to go quicker. He's 1/10 down on Lewis Hamilton. So unless he's able to pull off a mighty second and third sector, it looks like this will be Lewis Hamilton on pole, because Hamilton just went 2/10 quicker in the middle sector. So it seems like Silverstone is proving to be still Lewis Hamilton's track. Oh, 7-time winner. Ooh, looked like he got a big power slide there going out of the penultimate corner. We'll see how much that was able to affect his time. Yeah, he lost a lot of time there. This could be a big chance here for Max Verstappen. 7/hundredths of a second down in the middle sector there for Verstappen. He's going to need a mega big sector 3 here. Just keep it clean, and he might just be able to get by him. It's going to be very, very close. Let's see if that mistake will be costly for Lewis Hamilton. Verstappen comes across the line. I don't think that he'll be able to do it, and he won't. Misses out by 7/1000ths of a second. He lost a lot of time there in the middle sector. It seems like he either made a mistake or just wasn't able to improve, because he wasn't even setting a personal best in that sector. So it is Lewis Hamilton on pole for the first ever Formula One sprint qualifying race tomorrow. Valtteri Bottas rounds out the top 3. He was much closer, only 1/10 off of his teammate Lewis Hamilton, and very, very close to Max Verstappen. But it is a Verstappen-Hamilton front row lockout, as we've seen very much times in 2021. A special shout out there to George Russell, who finishes in 8th place. He will start 8th for tomorrow's sprint race, which is a very, very good lap. Out-qualifies Carlos Sainz and Sebastian Vettel, and very, very close to Daniel Ricciardo in that McLaren, who finishes 7th. Lando Norris out-qualifies his teammate once again, good enough for 6th. Only a couple of 100ths behind Sergio Perez in the second Red Bull for 5th place. But that will do it then for qualifying for the 2021 British Grand Prix. And it almost didn't happen there for Lewis Hamilton. A big oversteer moment coming out of the second to last corner. And luckily for Lewis, it didn't cost him, because I think that Max Verstappen also made some mistakes as he went through Sector 2. He lost quite a bit of time there on Sector 2. And that's where, unfortunately, he was not able to get pole. Still very close, though. Only a couple 100ths in it. But I think that overall, Hamilton, in terms of qualifying pace, seemed to be more comfortable and definitely quicker at the moment. But we'll see with the race. All right, see some chats come in from Sven. Good afternoon to you, or good evening to you. And Sven, I believe, if I remember correctly, he is our winner from the live stream giveaway way back when in March and early for our preseason testing live streams in the Netherlands. So happy to see you here. Welcome, and thanks for joining. And he says, I hope Russell gets some decent race pace and points for Williams. I think it could happen. 8th is a very good starting position. It's only a 17-lap race, so he doesn't have to make any pit stops. Let's hope that he's able to manage the tires. We'll see which ones he starts on, whether it's the soft or the medium. But, it's going to be very interesting. And fingers crossed, right, at the very least, that he can of course, he won't get any points, right, for I almost get confused there myself. He's not going to get any points unless he finishes in the top 3 tomorrow. But at the very least, if he finishes in the top 10, he can give himself a good starting position for the full race on Sunday. But this is where the big kind of storyline and the question is going to be, right, is if he is starting the race in the top 10 for tomorrow, but his race pace isn't as good, then he might just drop out and end up starting the full race in, 15th or 14th or something like that. So tomorrow will be very interesting. We hope that you guys can join us for tomorrow's stream. I'm going to be doing that from my home setup tomorrow. So hopefully that will go all smoothly. I'm currently at work at the moment because I was just finishing a shift in the morning and then jumped over to just one of these office space rooms to join you guys for this qualifying session. So yeah, very strange to have qualifying on a Friday. But before we go, we'll just maybe do one last update on the social media side of things. If you guys have any comments or questions, just get them in before we sign off in about another 5 or 10 minutes or so. But yeah, they're pretty happy. It's been a while since we've seen Mercedes on pole, right? We don't mind seeing it as much now because we're used to Red Bull getting poles in the last 3 or 4 races. But now we finally have Lewis Hamilton clawing back in this advantage. So let's see what the race pace is going to be like. But So far, so good for Mercedes, but this was the big question and what we talked about in the A to Z guide preview for this race as well, is what kind of upgrades, what kind of improvements can Mercedes make to the car. Didn't look good after FP1, but currently at the moment, it looks very, very good for them because they had a significant improvement. And I think that Hamilton, despite the mistake, obviously, would have set a much faster lap time. I think probably would have been a tenth or two ahead of Verstappen in the end had he gotten a clean lap in. But there you see the pressure of this championship and the pressure that is on Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton as well, that we're seeing a lot more of these mistakes that we haven't seen from Lewis in the last couple of years because of the fact that he is feeling a significant amount of pressure from his adversarial Dutch championship compatriot. So it's fun to see, though, actually. It's fun to see mistakes from both these guys because we know that they're pushing and we know that it's incredibly, incredibly close. And Charles Leclerc as well. That P4 wasn't looking good for them, but he pulled a lap out of the bag. And it's what we said at the beginning of the session, too. It's what he's known for. Race pace for Ferrari, not as great, but he's able to pull out those exceptional one-lap pace laps like he did here last year. So another good round for him. Now, if I believe correctly, they are going to technically count this pole for Hamilton as it would on a normal race weekend, which I don't think is the right way to go, but I believe that's how they're going to classify it. Let's just see if we can listen into the team radio of the pole position here. This was Max Verstappen's. Let's see. I missed this one earlier.
No front tires to finish the lap. It's insane. I just don't get what's going on. The car is good, but she's understeering to the moon. And it seems like the front wing is doing nothing.
Very interesting comments there from Max Verstappen saying that he's dealing with a ton of understeer, similar to what the Alpines were complaining about. And, then also just saying that he's not sure why, and that the front wing, I'm sure that they maybe added a little more front wing or maybe switched to a different spec front wing, isn't doing enough. So very interesting. Let's see if that will affect them in the race. Maybe it's the conditions, it's the wind, we're not exactly sure. But usually it's last few races, Red Bull's been really dialed in with their setup. So there's a development slightly if they're struggling with setup. And let's listen to Lewis Hamilton's team radio.
Let's not give those guys a tow.
Okay, so that was just before the session, so they didn't want to give any of their rivals a toe behind them. So we'll close that, and maybe we'll just do a last scroll here and then sign off for the day. So there's your top three for this session. We got Lewis Hamilton P1, a 126.134. Max Verstappen in second with a 126.209. And then Valtteri Bottas rounding out the top three with a 126.328. And we'll do a final rundown of the starting grid for tomorrow's race. Of course, barring any type of last-minute penalties or anything like that, this should be the starting grid for tomorrow's inaugural F1 sprint qualifying. So, of course, Hamilton P1, Verstappen second, Valtteri Bottas in third, Charles Leclerc fourth, second Red Bull of Sergio Perez in fifth, Lando Norris in sixth, Daniel Ricciardo in seventh, George Russell, probably the star of qualifying, in eighth, Carlos Sainz in ninth, and then Sebastian Vettel in the Aston Martin, rounding out the top 10 for the starting grid tomorrow. And then past the top 10, you got Fernando Alonso in 11th, Pierre Gasly in 12th, Esteban Ocon starting in 13th, Antonio Giovinazzi making it into Q2 once again, will start 14th, Lance Stroll with a disappointing qualifying performance. He's only managed to do 15th for tomorrow's race. Yuki Tsunoda couldn't get out of Q1. He will start 16th ahead of Kimi Räikkönen in 17th, Nicholas Latifi in 18th, and then rounding out the back of the grid, we've got Mick Schumacher and Nikita Mazepin in the Haas cars. So that will do it then for today's stream and qualifying for the 2021 British Grand Prix sprint race, which will take place tomorrow. As we mentioned off the top, guys, we will be live at just a little bit over 11 a.m. Eastern Time. So wherever you are in the world, if you are planning to watch, set your reminders. Of course, they will automatically convert the time zone for you. So just so that you don't miss that stream. I will be joined by Tyler McDonald. So the stream will be a little bit more dynamic with more people. Of course, it's a little bit difficult trying to follow all aspects and all elements just solo here. But nonetheless, I wanted to get this stream in to do a little bit of a makeup for the canceled stream we had just a few weeks ago. So really appreciate everybody who tuned in and watched the stream. If you guys are watching after and you weren't able to catch us live, just leave this video a like. Comment your predictions for the sprint race down below. Let us know what you think of this new sprint weekend format, whether it's going to be a failure, whether it's going to be a success, and just any general thoughts of what you saw from today's session. All right, so that will do it for me. I've been your host, Chris Cato. Thanks very much for the support and joining today's stream, and of course, all of the support you've given us by watching all of our videos. If you haven't already done so, hit that red subscribe button so you never miss any of these live streams or our podcasts or any other type of content. If you're going to join us tomorrow, we see you then. If not, we will see you after the British Grand Prix for our recap podcast. Until then, have a great day, guys.